I was driving through Kansas on Interstate 70 at night once when I hit one of the craziest thunderstorms I've ever seen. It was so bad that the road started flooding a bit, and I had to pull into a service plaza and wait it out. The creepy part happened. As I was sitting in the truck watching the storm, there was a series of lightning strikes followed by a blackout. Suddenly, a massively bright light starts moving behind the clouds, too slowly to be an aircraft, but too fast to be part of the storm system. It moves up and over the hills and trees before crossing directly overhead, then disappearing a bit behind the service plaza. The transit from tree line to plaza took maybe 5 to 10 minutes tops, and while it was overhead, it cast everything in an eerie blue glow and lit up the parking lot. I seriously thought aliens were invading. Anyway, within 10 minutes of the creepy light disappearing, the rain completely stopped and the parking lot lights came back on. Like someone flipped a switch. I got out of there while looking in my mirrors for spaceships or those alien walkers from War of the Worlds. It was a late night when a group of friends and I were on our way home from a business party. I had to be a good boy and stay sober, getting them home safely. Drinking was never a thing for me anyway. I just enjoyed the networking and building of my small yet lucrative business. Most of the people in the car were passed out, except for Ben, who always had this weird not getting drunk effect, or at least when he felt like it. Maybe it was an Ishvalan thing, something that was completely unique to them. Whatever it was, I was glad not to be the only one awake during the drive. The road was bare, except for a few cars that passed by. The stars danced within the night, glowing with a majestic might. The car highlighted the tree's red surface, flattened leaves falling with smooth grace. Small animals wandered the roads, creatures that I had never seen before or ever since. Ben started to talk about people vanishing. "So, you think it's a serial killer out?" Ben asked, staring out into the night. "I honestly don't know, but I hope they catch who or what people are talking about," I replied, focused on the road as a deer started peeking their heads out, but they looked wrong. Their eyes were blood red, the skin pale as a naked moon. I watched them in case they chose to leap into the road, but they never did. The fact never made me calm. Ben played with a small cube-like device, something that roared with an arcane aura, another form of Ishvalan uniqueness. Their tech had always been strange and otherworldly, like it had no place in the world of man. "There's a myriad of them out tonight," Ben said, still playing with the object. "They look different, unnatural." He stopped, as if hearing something from behind. Ben turned his head towards the back, his pupils widened, jaw dropping, and with an indescribable awe. I looked at him for a moment before those last words echoed across my mind. "There's a stranger in the back." His words filled the air with a terrible dread. I pulled the car to the side of the road. Never understood what drove me to do such a thing. I turned the blinkers on and looked towards the back seat. Saw no one. When I looked to make eye contact with Ben, he was gone. The passenger side door was wide open. A slight breeze invited itself in. My friends woke from the dream. They stared at me and asked about Ben. I couldn't answer them, as tears fell down my face. I knew he wasn't going to be found. That was only a few days ago. We looked for him and came up with nothing. No foot tracks, no signs of struggle. Absolutely nothing. I was driving through Montana, headed east, and my company had miscalculated my mileage, so I requested an emergency fuel up. I got a response with the nearest gas station that I could get approved at. It wasn't exactly close, so I turned off the main highway and headed towards my stop. It's pitch black. There's no moon, no city light, and I haven't seen any headlights for about an hour. I'm cruising down the highway and I see something in the middle of the road at the furthest extent of my headlights, so I slow down naturally as I approach it. When I come to pass it, I get one good glance at it and slam on my brakes as I pass right in the middle of the highway. All I could think was, what did I just see? So I back up, looking in the mirror until I see its red silhouette in my brake lights. I pull my brakes, put on my jacket and grab my flashlight and hop out. I walk to the back of my trailer and put my light on it, and there it was, a headless, skinless, mangled corpse. I froze and my jaw dropped. I didn't know what I was looking at. I just stood there, in the middle of the highway, in the cold, stagnant air. The only sound is the hum of my truck 50 feet back, watching the steam rise from the pile of meat. There was no fur, there was no clothing, just a fully intact rib cage with a mess of other miscellaneous bones. I debated calling the police, as the rib cage looked big enough for someone my size. I looked at my phone and had 0 cell service. The nearest town was about 50 miles out. I put my phone away. I flashed my light around, and standing at the end of the road were a handful of coyotes staring at me. Then they started coming through the fence and trotting in my direction. I figured, this is the part where I get back in my truck before I get into a situation. So I did. I continued on my way. I still to this day do not know if it was human or not. Whatever it was, and whenever it happened, I was almost a witness of it. I convinced myself that it was more likely a deer, and it was hit by another truck like my own at highway speeds. That would definitely do significant damage. But in retrospect, I've never seen a roadkill missing its flesh before. My dad was a trucker for many years. One time, he told me he'd stopped at a mandatory way station somewhere at night that was refurbished from an old train station. My dad parked the truck and got out, noticing that someone was walking along the train tracks with a light. It was really late, so my dad called out and asked if he was okay. The man just kept on walking. My dad said he had a lantern in his hand. My dad called out again. The man never turned around. He went into the office and told him that some drunk guy is walking on the train tracks. The guy behind the desk nonchalantly says, "Yeah, was it this guy?" and points to some really old picture on the wall. It was a picture of all the rail yard guys from like over 70 years before. Sure enough, my dad had seen one of the guys in the photo. Apparently, a lot of people have seen whatever that was and come and asking questions. Many years ago, I was on a shift called Meet and Turn. This is where the driver that is domiciled out of the city will drive a load halfway to his destination, while the other driver then meets him halfway and brings the load where it needs to be delivered. I've been doing runs like these for several months, and I found out that I had to meet on point an hour before the other driver had arrived. It was a dark and empty lot, around 3 a.m., so since there was still some time to kill, I decided to close my eyes and take a short nap. About 10 minutes into my nap, I was awakened by a barking dog. I tried to ignore it, but the bark carried on for several minutes, and it grew louder and closer. At this point, it became clear that he's either trying to alert me of something or just being a pain in the butt. So I sat up and looked out my window, and what I saw left me motionless. Standing there, inches on the other side of the glass, was a man around 35 years of age. He was a large fellow, and he was barking at me. His eyes were crazy, and he was even frothing a little from his mouth. The sheer creepiness struck me, and gently, without making any sudden movements, I reached down and started my truck and slowly started pulling away. As I was doing so, he was chasing after me, much like you'd expect an angry dog still barking as I kept pulling away. Needless to say, I don't take naps on the job anymore. I was driving for Costco a few years back. It was around the same time of year. We usually took extra toy shipments to various locations through the holiday season. We got a call that one of our locations in rural Kentucky needed to restock their giant Spider-Man dolls. They knew I was a fast driver, so I was given the last-minute late-night duty. I loaded my truck and headed out on the 265. It was around 3 a.m. when I started to have this eerie feeling. I chalked it up to being tired and popped a couple of no-dos. About 15 minutes later, the road started to fog up. I mean, more so than any other time before or since. It got to the point where I had to pull off to the side and wait. There weren't any other cars on the road, and I was ahead of time, so I figured I could wait until it cleared up a bit. About 5 minutes of sitting still in silence, my truck goes dead. No lights, no engine, nothing. I try my CB, but cannot get anyone on. Check my cell phone and there is no signal. As I'm sitting there contemplating my next move, I hear what sounds like a child crying. It slowly morphed into a woman crying, or at least what it sounded like to me. Now, I'm a big man, 6'3", 250 pounds, but I refused to exit my cab. I did, however, roll down my window and asked if anyone needed help. At that point, the crying stopped. Then, I heard what sounded like a sinister laugh. At that point, I felt the laughter was directed at me. I rolled up my window, and it seemed like the more scared I became, the louder the laugh went. Then, as soon as it started, it stopped. Just like that, my truck started back up, and the fog disappeared. I drove out of there like a bat of hell. Get to my next truck stop and pull in, run to the bathroom and pour water on my face and ask myself, did that really just happen?